Welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Hurford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. All right. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete podcast. Happy holidays. Hopefully everyone is having a great holiday week. I admit we are recording this a little bit early, but nonetheless, this episode is coming out the lovely week between Christmas and the New Year. So, hopefully there are some people listening to this while they're doing the Rafa Festive 500, or, getting out on a ski or a walk or whatever with their family.
Tis the season.
The season.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, we always appreciate everyone and tuning in, especially if this is over the holidays. Maybe you're out on a walk trying to escape your family, and we respect that. We get it.
Peter more so than me, since he's when this comes out, we'll be with my family for the holidays here.
Sure, but enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Exactly. So this week we are talking all about, as you say, 'tis the season, goals for the new year. So this is always a fun topic. I've written about it for Canadian Cycling going on almost a decade.
That's right.
Now.
You write the same article every single year.
I do not.
You don't even need ChatGPT. You just submit the same article.
This really hurts. This hurts. You know what?
You do pivot it each year.
I was just going to say, if you read the editor's letter this year, Matt actually points out that I've been writing this article for many years now, and I come up with new iterations on it every time.
Okay.
So there, Glassford. This year I was all about pivoting away from old goals that are maybe no longer serving you. If you're listening to this and you've constantly set the goal of upping your FTP by 20 watts or
5 pounds.
Losing 5 pounds.
That's right.
5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20, whatever that number is for you. And either you have, consistently made it or you haven't made it. Either way, it's time to really think about what's next. Oh, we have a
third co-host. If you're watching on YouTube, which you can on the Consummate Athlete YouTube channel, we have DW has made an appearance here.
I feel like so many podcasts talk about their producer coming in or the sound guy chimes in.
You should know, it's always Jerry in the sound booth.
Yeah, we just have a tiny dachshund who wants to get involved in the mix.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really liked writing this year's article about the pivoting goals because I do think we tend to get stuck in the resolution rut, if you will. And even discipline-wise, right? We get very attached to whatever discipline we happen to be in. And, times change, we change. There's just, I don't know, a lot of reasons for wanting to make a switch. So,
which can be scary, but I think, if you've had the same one, you've been doing the same thing, it's probably good. So then, did you want to get into your pivoting article, or where did you want to go with this?
Well, I think maybe we should actually start with why set goals at all. And I mean, this is something you deal with your clients fairly frequently, I would say, is, a lot of people come to coaching because they have a one race goal and then they finish the race and are sort of in that bit of what's next, or even, as the season ends, a little bit of uncertainty toward next year. And, that's, I think, where a lot of people end up dropping out of sport or, away from coaching or away from having.
Well, they say there's sort of these two. So there's the point A, the point B. And so there's with your, your national level athletes, your people, Olympians, the point B is fairly obvious.
Right.
But then you have to be more clear about where you are and what that next step would be. So the point A is actually, you need to define that, right? So your Olympian might, they might get more testing, or they might be working closely with a coach to try and keep orienting towards that North Star of that point B, that Olympics or whatever it is. For a lot of the rest of us, I would very much count myself in this, right? It's not really clear what the point B is. You probably have a good idea where you are.
Right.
And probably the next steps are less even important than that Olympian who's doing everything to try and optimize performance, right? That's why it's hard to really quantify, right? You're already doing a lot of this stuff. For a lot of us, myself included, there's some pretty, some of these are the fundamentals, the things that aren't as exciting. But the point B is harder because you have to sort of like pick something. And we can, a lot of times we can pick a lot. So that's sometimes an interesting framework, and actually does, why do you set a goal? Well, it's so that we can start making decisions in a certain direction, right? A lot of the decisions, or a lot of the directions are okay, but you need to sort of decide the thing that you like.
Actually, that did come out a lot in this pivoting article. I was talking to Krista Chandler, who we have had on the podcast. She's a mental performance consultant and kinesiologist over at, I'm blanking on the university. But anyway, she was great talking about this because she actually pointed out a lot of the time we put the big point B goal on the calendar, but then we actually fail to kind of step back and like look at what are the small every day, every week, like process-oriented goals that get to the point B. And those are so much more important than the actual point B goal, right? Like, for me, obviously my point B this year is Leadville. And that's a very important goal. But like, if I don't figure out what the weekly and daily looks like for that, then when I get to Leadville, there's just no way I'm making it. And Olympians do, you're right. They have it so much easier. Not only do they have that definitive goal and like literal, like laid out exactly what you need to do to get to the Olympics, like sets of standards from their national governing body, they also often don't have any other things. That's the goal. Whereas like, how many people have you coached who have Leadville on the bucket list, or like on the list for this year? That's their A goal. But they also have a work conference where they're presenting the week before. Sure. That is like their A work goal. And then the week after they have like a family vacation. That is also their like family A goal. So I think, the sort of the normal person, and I'm putting quotations around the average person here, actually has like a lot more demands on their time and energy and their goals compared to a professional athlete.
Right. And I do think, we're still around this why concept. And I do think this is why setting goals and even your pivoting, which like leads into reflection on the past seasons, maybe multiple seasons. It's really, you want to try and set yourself up for success and a good time. Success doesn't need to mean money or people showering praise on you. It could just be like you go to BC bike race and you have a great week and it's just like a solid week at summer camp and you feel strong, but you're mid packing or party at the back or wherever your success is for you. But we want to say, like, to your point about Leadville, was it seamless? Was there enough slack in the system that you could enjoy the process, the training rides beforehand and then lead into it? And then you go to the work conference and focus on that stage of life, that season of life, that vacation with the family. Whereas I guess where I was going with that is, if you're the person who comes into the spring classics every year and it's just, you're a teacher, so it's the most hectic time of the year, or you live in some place that just is not great for training, and it's always tough. It's always frustrating. You're always nervous. But then, you get really fit by July, but then you don't pick races in July, right? That might be a reflection you could make.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gets to one of our biggest tips with any athlete is really that looking at the annual calendar and not just looking at the race schedule, but also looking at your work schedule, your family schedule, your life schedule, like all of the other things around it.
Sure.
And instead of picking an event, I think instead of picking an event based on the event, picking the event based on the training that you need to do for the event that like feels the best for you and makes the most sense for you. Because to your point, you might have time to race in April, but if you can't train February, March because of, a hectic phase at work or the weather or whatever, like even if you have that weekend clear, that race still doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think a lot of people look at the calendar and just try to slot races in, but I think also thinking about slotting, like how is training into that race going to unfold? So,
and knowing yourself, like I am not a great, I'm okay at riding the trainer and staying like okay fit, but I do not like doing intensity on the trainer anymore. I used to be better, but so it's just, again, and I don't like the cold, and I don't like to be rushed. So for me, I like July goals. It gets warm. I've had like 2 and 3 months of good, hard outside riding. I've had a couple practice races, and then I can show up and go as hard as I can for that like one day. And I don't know, for me, that's pretty good. This year that, fits in pretty well because I'm gonna have to figure out running a little bit more this year too, but we've done that before. But because we have this family event and that you are racing this pretty involved race in August, again, I'm not gonna as much, and I'll tell a story about Breck Epic and stuff too. But Molly's doing this 100-mile race is her goal, but this is a whole family trip, moving across the country for a couple of weeks to get ready. So, in theory, I shouldn't plan a lot of stuff for racing and training in those weeks, right?
Yes, and you also need to be able to run, so there is that.
Right. Now, what I'm saying is that it's very hard as a everyday person because we can do anything, right?
Right.
So there's also happens to be Breck Epic, and it has a 3-day thing, and it's like the week before, and I'm like, I'm not the one racing, right? So why don't I just jump into Breck Epic, 3 days before your big race? But then I need to look at like, okay, well, is this leaving slack for like errors, or if I have to drive to Denver to get you new shoes or something like this, right? It doesn't really leave slack into your biggest race of the year. So then the answer is pretty clear that like, that's just a bonehead thing to try and race. I want to race Breck Epic. It looks like the hardest race ever. But another year.
Could that be 2025?
That could be, again, and I can pre-ride. Last year I pre-rode a couple of the stages, so I can go, I can see what there is. We have a few clients doing Breck Epic, so I can go and even volunteer or support that week a bit. But I don't need to go and, race vigorously ahead of that week.
Well, they do have a great new women's initiative at Breck Epic that I feel like we should just shout out, like for no reason other than it's
looks
super
fun.
cool. So maybe that's if they do that again in 2025, maybe we go for 2025 and like we're both racing. Just put that out there.
Ambitious 2-year goal for you, I think, but
you're the one that said I need to bring my mountain bike this winter to work on my skill. You've put that process goal on my
True.
my resolution list here. All right, so before we get into just kind of a refresh of SMART goals, quick word from our sponsor, AG1. They've been on the show for 2 years. They've been in our lives for even longer. AG1, formerly known as Athletic Greens, is the foundational nutritional supplement that, I'm not gonna lie, you kind of need in your life. Like, if there's one supplement I can take, it is AG1, because it is all of the things. It's your probiotics, your prebiotics, your adaptogens, your vitamins, your minerals, one-stop shop that actually tastes good. We've been using this new little frother thing to mix it right up into water in the morning. It's the first thing I do when I wake up. And yeah, I just think it's probably the best, like smartest thing that I've done for myself. I've gotten it for my dad, who hates vegetables.
I've seen it pop up on a few gift things as well. You could give people like a little trial or let them try it out as well. Yeah, and I do like it for the clients, especially who, we'll get into some of these lifestyle factors and goals and standards here in a bit, but they don't eat very well. They're very rushed. They're very busy. They don't know how to cook, whatever, right? Like life throws these things at us. And so this is a good way to start edging into, water and some nutrients in the morning. And then maybe how does that unroll into a greater day?
Yeah, and definitely, tis the season, I guess, here. Like, we're in cold and flu season, so anything you can do to support your immunity. And if you use our code drinkag1.com/MollyH, you do get a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. It's these little droplets because vitamin D is fat-soluble, so you need the oil. Also very tasty. But yeah, cannot recommend it enough, especially around this time of year. If you're traveling, they have travel packs. You also get 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Just cannot say enough good things about that. So to take ownership over your health and try AG1, just head to drinkag1.com/MollyH and get your 5 free travel packs plus your year supply of vitamin D. Again, drinkag1.com/MollyH.
Cool. So you mentioned SMART goals.
I did.
Most years we forget to look up what SMART goals means, and then we stumble our way through it.
I'm so proud of you for putting these in our show notes.
There you go. We got an outline. I don't know how smooth it'll go, but here we go. So, I think I roll a little bit around SMART goals, but some of this is common sense, but like common sense isn't common. A lot of us set goals, but then forget to put a deadline on it. A lot of us, is it attainable? Do you want to read what SMART goals is, since we've bragged on writing it down?
So a SMART goal is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, the thing is, I think a lot of us kind of skate over this in athletics because a lot of race goals are just by nature a lot of these things, right? They are specific, like it's this race. Like, okay, let's say Breck Epic. It's specific. It's Breck Epic. It's measurable. You finish the race or you win the race or whatever. Achievable, that's the question mark. Relevant, question mark. Time-bound, yes, we know the date of the race. So you already have 3 of the 5 components just like click, just locked in place. So I think the achievable and relevant are really maybe what a lot of us miss as athletes, particularly relevant.
Right. And I mean, you also have to remember that just saying BC bike race isn't a goal.
Right.
You need to say, I'm going to do this at BC bike race, which might be feel strong throughout the day. I'm very open to this qualitative thing. It is nice if we can add some sort of, for the whole week, I want to be under 30 hours or 20 hours for the total week. You can sort of, if you haven't done the race, you can triangulate a bit off of like past results, what would give you like a mid-pack finish. So that might be of interest. Some people do not even want to touch the time. And then it is a feeling, it is a few, we can break this into more like process or practice or race goals, where it's like fueling goals or, taking a photo. Like some of them can get down that road depending on what you're looking for out of it. But I think you do, like, that's where it does get a little trickier, that it's not just like necessarily doing the race. I guess you could say finishing the race. Finishing would be a thing. Yeah. Finishing some of these big things. I want to finish Leadville in under 12 hours or 11:59 or whatever the thing is.
Sorry, I thought you meant the run for a second. I was like, holy crap, man. Okay,
but then I think you want to look at too. So then when we look at those SMART goals, then so it's specific, measurable. So is there a measure? Did you finish? What was the time? What was the placing? What was the number of gels? What was the number of smiles per miles? What was the whatever you're measuring, right? I think that makes sense. What is it? Relevant and time bound.
Wow, your vision is real bad.
It's going all of a sudden, and it's really scary. So relevant. This is my goals. Yeah, I was just at the eye doctor, which is a good goal too. So relevant though. So let's break this out then. I think these get more, as you say, like relevant could be, this could be related to your pivoting. Maybe it's not relevant to you anymore.
I think it's also both like the calendar, like, does this fit in your life? But also like, are you just doing it because the cool kids are doing it? So like, not to throw gravel under the bus, but like, I'm going to throw gravel under the bus a little bit here.
Yeah, some people get sucked in because everyone's going to Unbound, but then they forgot that this happened to Leah Davidson. We've talked to her about this.
Yeah.
Where she got sucked into the Lifetime series, which is mostly a gravel series, but Leah Davidson is a cross-country Olympic mountain bike racer, which I would group myself in. And so she went for it, good on her, but then she was like, this is not fun at all, and I'm done. And so she called it, which is like, I think a skill to say, I'm done with this, huge, unfortunately. Yeah.
No, I was genuinely impressed by that. Okay, so actually I want to backtrack you for 2 seconds. Like you're talking about measurable. What's your thought on placing? Like, so race goals based on...
I always think when Ellen Noble was on, she said like, you could do that, but you had to have like a context for it. So like if you're always in the top 3 and have won nationals, then like you could set that goal for top 3. But if you this is complete before you compete. If you've never been there and you're not one of those people, if you're not Leah Davidson, right? Leah Davidson was probably trying to win the Quebec singles track experience, right? And she like got on the overall podium a couple times, and there was a couple fast guys. I might know one of them. But
you're talking about you. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't see him in the screen, but there he is.
Good looking guy. Real good looking.
That fuzzy blob looks really good. Yeah. And so, you would have a context. So I do always think to that. Ellen actually had a really great quote when she was on. That was many years ago now. But like sort of like when you're setting these goals, there's sort of like you would have context for that. And if you don't, then I think you have to be careful. You can ease into it, but I don't think, this is the like classic, we always joke about the World Cup races where someone who, has never been in the top 50 is like, not the result I was hoping for. And it's like, okay, I mean, like, you're not like, this was a 55th, like that's about what you should be hoping for at this point in your life, right? Like there's no context for better than that. So a few people have said like, everyone's cheering for you. Just don't whine about it and like make up these weird, like hoping for better. Just say like, this is a great result, continue training, great performance.
Hashtag onward and upward.
Not even just like, thanks for your support. Like, here's a funny photo. Like just stop with the like hoping. We don't hope for stuff.
Yeah, knock that off.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, okay. We're a little aggressive about that.
Little aggressive. But you know what? We've seen it for 15 years, so it's a thing.
Probably written the blog post, to be honest, but there you go. So then you have, okay, we decided we're going to go, I'm wearing the 24 hours of adrenaline. I have a few clients who are going solo, tag team, aggressive 5-person, party 10-person. But in the party 10-person, you have to be the fastest of the party 10-person. Wow. So it is, it is tricky. So you have goals around these events. You're psyched on it. But then, now we have months to prepare. So this is where then you start making the SMART goals, again, where there's some measures, some times. And I think this is where sometimes we can be a little better, right? We can say like, we're going to do this ride or this effort or this whatever by this date, we're going to go to this camp, and we're going to put in this mileage by this date. And I think that's really where the power of these goals. And now, again, when we started this podcast, we talked about the rest of us, it's sometimes hard to know which direction to go, which thing to go after. So now that we've set that point B goal, the 24 hours, whatever the big race is, we're going to step towards that. And are we on time? Are we getting to all these little mini goals along the way, the process goals along the way? And I do think that there's power there. And it's just how you do it. So, and probably the specific piece gets important there as well.
What do you think? Maybe this isn't really even on this exact topic, but I just keep thinking about the placing. What do you think about like A, B, and C goals out of any goal? So again, we'll say like Breck Epic or whatever. You have like, the A goal is that you want to finish it under 20 hours. And then your B goal is you want to, maybe it is just like 20 hours is the A goal, 25 is the B goal, 30 is the C goal, or C goal. Or B. Sorry.
That's a t-shirt. Yeah, there you go. Soon in the Consummate Athlete show. The seagulls. And it's a seagull.
It's going to be cute. Yeah.
Well, maybe that could be our mascot instead of this like riding guy here. And if you're watching YouTube, we have our logo here. Molly made this with a cricket thing, by the way. A very cool machine. Cry-cut, is it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Cry-cut cricket.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll put a cricket and a seagull.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, anyway, back to my point.
Seagulls.
Or your B goal could be not bunking every day, or smiling every mile, or finishing. So what do you think about having sort of that ABC? Because I think for me, for Leadville, I'm almost certainly going to have that, because
I think for some people, I think probably everyone, there's, the race finishing is always worthwhile, a good goal. It's always going to be hard. It's never going to be like it was the last time you did Leadville or the 24 hours. You're going to have adversity. So you need to always keep we keep moving to get to the finish line. There's no negotiation, until someone tells you to stop because you fell and you're delirious.
And I'm going to argue against myself when I said the 20, 25, 30. I actually don't like that set of ABC goals. Sorry, I can't stop laughing when I say seagulls now. Maybe it's just the Jersey accent really emphasizes it. But okay, I don't like that because I think that's too drop downy. Like the day you have one bad day, now you're into, okay, well now it's 25 hours, and then you have another bad day. Now it's 30 hours. I like having disparate goals where they all lead to a good result. So for me, A goal is going to be win Leadville. My coach will murder me if I don't say win Leadville. If I say top 5, he's going to be like, no, you have to win. That's the goal. But B, the B one for me is around fueling, because for me, I know that's probably the biggest thing for getting to that A goal.
Well, and so those get into, now you're sort of mixing things. I guess it could be yes, I finished the race and I continued to eat, but I would say that those are supporting the race goal. So these are the race, the process goals, whatever you want to call those within the race. The ABC thing you're talking about, I see more as winning, but then if you can't win, you want to be under this time goal. And then if you can't win, then it's finishing the thing is very worthwhile. So that to me is the day is a success if you get across there and you crawl across at 27 hours or something, or whatever it is. That's, I think, with the actual race goals, that's where that it has utility, is that you continue to fight for it. Mm-hmm. And I think you would see some people might be in a time trial, there might be ABC, there's a standard, but you have a super stretch goal on a great day. You'd just knock it out of the park, but then you beat you get your own personal best is the B one, and then the C one is maybe whatever, the last one you got, or, whatever the time. I think you could probably have them where they're a series of times, but those are getting away from some of these messier off-road races that we often are looking at.
Yeah. I do just think it's tricky, and you need to know yourself when you set the ABC versions of any of these, because I think it's very easy to let yourself almost immediately default to the C. I'm not gonna lie, that's what happened to me in the Leadville Marathon. I pretty much on the first hill, a bunch of women were super hard charging and went for it, and I was like, well, okay, there goes winning.
Right.
B goal is qualifying. And ultimately, I ended up passing a lot of those women in the back half. And if I had just not let myself slip down immediately in the rung to the B goal.
Sure.
And just been yep, screw it, I'm going to go.
Now, I'd be interested to know if you actually were thinking through that, but some of this is experience, right? This is where I think when you are used to racing at the front, then you start knowing these things, right? there's a time in races where like you need to be cross-eyed, and depends a little bit on the race, but again, this is people start really hard. Like I know your coach just raced a 50 miler and it was very fast for the first bunch of this running race, even though it was going to be a 50 mile. I don't know what their time was.
Well, that's what mine was too when I did the 50.
Yeah, it started
last
uphill,
month.
and no one wants to run, get caught up in the pack and stuff. The racing is sort of like some of these race things are like pretty universal, right? Like there's always an aggressive start. Whatever aggressive is for the discipline. No one's sprinting like a 100-meter sprint off of a 50-mile thing, but they are moving.
But I do think that's actually what I learned, like in June. I would actually say, yes, I 100% thought about that in the beginning when all of those people were going. Like, because I'm used to being at the front, like kind of irregardless, because a lot of the races I've done, I have been in that front pack. So when I wasn't, like very quickly, my energy completely shifted. But then this last race in October, like 2 guys went out far too hard. Hopefully they're not listening to this, but very clearly too hard. But I still went with them because
right.
I was like, nope, this time you're going to go.
That's really the reason. And we've spoke a bit about, racing a bit more, even local races, even though you don't like it. Because this is what you start seeing is like the stuff sort of unravels similarly, but like there's always different scenarios. And this is where once you've raced a lot, like I think about our friend Alexi Vermeulen, he's, done all these pro tour races and, Iceman unfolded in a way where there's a bunch of youth, attacking and all over the place. And then somehow he rolls across a little bit. It was luck this year, but he was in second wheel and then Ty unfortunately crashed at the Iceman Cometh and Alexi's in first again, right? But he wasn't the one pulling a ton. He wasn't the one, attacking, in these ways. Like I think he was trying to get to the front and couldn't, he was getting, but it seems like he's in the right place a lot of the times, right? And why? It's not that he's like it's because he's been in the situation a lot, right? And thought about it a lot. So some of this is learning this. And this comes back to, well, then your goal might be just to complete the race if you don't know any of this stuff. And some of us might be fortunate enough, the luck might be in our favor, the race might not be competitive, we might be genetically really gifted or really, we understand tactics from something else. We might win in that complete before you compete thing. That's very possible, but it's still very much like when you're coming into it, like I don't think you need to be as aggressive with it.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, you just mentioned the word luck, and let's come back to one of my favorite lines of all time. Tom Hopper classic, luck favors the prepared. And that's really what we're talking about here, is having these big goals, but then how can you prepare for them? And, you just kind of mentioned for me, it's probably going to be being on more start lines and more local races just to get that, figure out what the group is doing and like play to
well,
that.
and just think, I think it's, and I still have, I don't know that a lot of this, like nerves don't go away. Nerves are good, but you come to the race and you're like, fuck, people look so pro. And then, how many times I've raced probably, I don't know, 1,000 times in my life. And I'm always like, everyone looks so pro. I'm just going to be last place. And then usually I'm okay. I do okay.
Do you remember when I did my first 100-miler? I went to the bathroom before the start, and there were a bunch of women in there,
and they had like Hoka shoes and like
super kitted
bandanas,
and they're all talking about their next 200-miler. And I came out, and I was like almost in tears. I was so stressed.
Like, everyone's so good, and I was like, you need to go to the front, get ahead of these people.
I think you heard 200, and we're just like, nope, you gotta go. You're now in a speed.
Those are not the people. No offense to 200-mile people.
No, they're just different level.
So let's keep this on track here.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think one of the questions we had was actually just our own 2024 goals. So I've talked about my Leadville one. Do you have a 2024 goal, or are we just going to stick to using Leadville as the example here?
Yeah, that's probably it. I mean, I'll go back to nationals. There's a couple local races. Yeah, I think again, I'm probably someone who's, sitting on the same type of goals, but
okay. Well, 2025 is your year.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm still intrigued by the cross country Olympic race, right? So I sort of race a couple of those and pick a couple. The local one is happening again, and I lost it last year because it turned into a mud race. And Sid beat me. So I coach Sid, which is awesome. So it's always great when
Yeah.
your own athlete dances away from you. Makes you look like you don't know how to ride a bicycle. So I'll probably try that one again as a local race. And then, yeah, just go back to nationals and see if I can get that one again.
Ooh, okay. Here's a question for you. I have a 2025 goal for you. So I actually realized on my run yesterday, I was bragging about you to a few people, or on Saturday, I was bragging about you to a few people. And I mentioned that you used to have the Canadian Leadville record. And then I was like, oh, I should look what the Canadian Leadville women's running record is.
This is a fake record that I created.
I mean, look, Canadians are very big on Top Canadian.
Top Canadian.
And as a Canadian now, that means I can go for Top Canadian. Yeah?
I don't know, because there was the one Canadian guy I think won it, but I don't know women how they've done. Yeah, I don't know.
So I'm gonna
I apologize if someone's done really well.
I'm sure they have. So I'm going to look, but if I get the Canadian women's Leadville running record and I realize that was like 17, like the top Canadian, like very specific, would you go back to Leadville to try to get the Leadville men's record again?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe. We'll see.
I would love that. I think that would be very cute.
It's a lot of pedaling.
So much
yeah.
pedaling. Anyway.
So those are our race goals, roughly. Let's call them that. So mine's in July, yours is in August. They're all set for our family activities.
So I thought that was actually a good point to bring in David Epstein's fit. Is it fit equals grit? Fit before grit? What's this phrase here?
Well, there's a couple different ones, but yeah, so Epstein, I think it was in that last book, which we had him on speaking about. It's a great book. I think it's like basically, I think I told him this is basically the Consummate Athlete like manifesto, the idea that generalists persist. What is this called? Range is the name of his book.
Really good gift for anyone too.
And I'm not positive that that's where this phrase is, but it's a David Epstein thing. And in any case, his Substack newsletter is also really good. So it's fit. Once you find fit, then it looks like grit is the one way I've seen it. You know, fit before grit, fit equals grit. And what they're saying is that once you find the thing that fits with your mindset, your predispositions, your lifestyle, your skills, your genetics, your whatever, then suddenly it looks like you have grit, like you like really work hard and you like persist. But his argument, and this is, you know, not just him, this is some research as well, is that a lot of times it's that people just are really into the thing. So, you know, I really like cross-country mountain bike racing. So when I, you know, do it and it gets hard, I keep doing it because it has some sort of intrinsic, you know, I'm wired up to like it. Again, like it matches what I'm good at in some ways. You keep going with it, right? And I would say you with like longer running, like you're just naturally, you have a pretty good efficient running stride. Obviously mentally you're able to deal with just the monotony of it.
Compared to a 5K where I fall apart entirely.
So the message then is to Molly's pivoting article as well, is just, you know, sometimes if it's like this is a struggle, I haven't had a couple, you know, the seasons, it just doesn't seem like it's clicking. Like it's okay to look at other stuff. We've had clients go to, you know, CrossFit or baseball or whatever the different things are you go. And it could just be a different cycling discipline if you want it to be a cycling discipline. But this is where, you know, someone finds track and, you know, they're a bigger guy and it's like, holy crap, I'm like the biggest, you know, fastest guy here. And I'm super, like, I belong in this track. Right. And then same, it could be like a spring classic. Like you're just a hard person and you like the mud and you don't get cold. Right. But then maybe you didn't like heat in the summer. Right. So then figure it out. You know, this is the idea. So finding the fit, I think, is a really interesting thing.
I was just flashing to my dad, just being like, you really suck in heat.
Well,
it's going to be a problem for me for the rest of my life.
There you go.
But anyway, yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things with the relevancy even of the SMART goal is, you know, does the goal make sense for you? And I do think, like, when we say this fit before grit, this does not necessarily mean exactly what you're the best at if you don't enjoy what you're the best at. Because I think there's plenty of people for whom, like, you actually see this with a lot of retired pros, like, they're not going to keep racing. Like, Nino may not opt to keep racing XCO with his, like, you know, number of world championship titles and most World Cup wins of all time. Like, he may go to, like, gravel or Ironman or
he might not ride ever again.
Cross-country
you see,
ski
I think a lot of people don't ever ride again, but yeah.
Like, I think because the joy of that, like, is no longer, like, a thing. And for some people it totally is, but I think it doesn't have to be what you're the best at. It has to be like what you enjoy the most.
I think it's getting at that intrinsic, they call it intrinsic motivation. So it's things that are internal to you. So this is like you feel good, you feel competent, you whatever, right? There's just something that you would go and do it every day. It's more painful. They talk about it's more painful not to do it than to do it. Extrinsic, which, Nino obviously has both, I think, and has a good balance. He wouldn't do it this long without, but I mean, he is motivated by money, and there are, titles on the line and records on the line and, whatever. So sponsorship obligations. So this is where it gets trickier, is that extrinsic thing. So I think that's a good point. And I think we see lots of people who race at the back of the pack their entire career and never seem to, and you're like, wow, they have a lot of grit. And it's like, no, maybe it just, they really enjoy it and to each their own. Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe that is grit all along.
I guess, sure.
Okay, so last topic we wanted to touch on is really these more like lifestyle things. And this is where the rubber meets the road, if you will, as far as what are the daily things that you can be doing to get to that goal. And this is above and beyond, we always talk about obviously having a training plan, working with a coach. Actually, I just talked to Kelly Starrett, author of Built to Move, which we'll talk about in a second, but I was talking to him for an article for Canadian Running, and he's so on the like, you should have a coach or at minimum a plan, no matter how old you are, no matter how new you are to sport, no matter what your goals are, because without a coach, he's like, what are you even doing?
Right. Well, or a plan, right? I think even just like something that's going to keep you, again, this is where some of the goals are almost implicit to a plan, right? You're A, finish the plan. B, take the rest days every week. C, whatever you're doing will generally progress through a plan. The long ride or run will get longer. The intervals midweek will get, harder, longer, more, whatever. Right. And this is the nature of a plan. So I think even like your, classic out of a magazine plan for a lot of people probably is better than not, just randomly doing things.
Okay. So we have a training plan. We're working with a coach. We sort of know that. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are pretty aware that having a plan is going to help you get to the goal. Most people are aware of that. I'd say your 8 months to Leadville training plan, which is available on Training Peaks now, is one of your...
Or Unbound or whatever. Yeah, we have lots on there. And yeah, again, this gets to... we started the podcast talking about, when you're an Olympian, it probably matters a little bit more, the little pieces, like how much of this and how much of that and when of this and the timing and the frequency and all the intensity. For a lot of other people, it's probably the struggle is, and yourself, like if the limiter is that you don't train frequently, then, if it's a spin class or it's a whatever way gets it done.
Yeah. Side note, plug for Peloton. Not a sponsor. Definitely not a sponsor. Wish they were a sponsor.
Sure.
Would take them as a sponsor.
And so Molly was doing this, and it's just basically like a video where they say go harder, and you adjust whatever you're on and go harder, right? Like it's not a smart thing where it's adjusting the load for you. It's very much like going to a spin class, and you said you really liked it.
Yeah, I did not expect to, but I'm doing a piece for bicycling that's just kind of Zwift versus Peloton. Not like a who's going to win, but like which one might be better for you, just depending on who you are, what your goals are. And I did not expect to like Peloton, but they have a month free trial too. So like honestly, I would say even if you're not thinking about actually doing it, get the free trial for a month. It's so worth it. There's all kinds of classes on it too. So it's your kind of generic spin classes that are really fun, by the way, and really well done. But also yoga, Pilates, strength, like interval training, kind of all of those.
And then you can sort of pick and be, sort of trick yourself into, okay, I'll do 30 or I'll do 15 or, I really like this trainer. I was saying to you, there's probably a piece there versus Zwift where it's like you're actually looking at an actual person and maybe you like a certain trainer. So then I was saying like if they're weekly, it's almost like a TV show where you want to stay caught up or finish the whole set or whatever it is. Yeah, I think it could be a great solution. And so that's where even the fit of the training thing you're using, some people maybe get stuck in whatever the online software is or the way you're doing it, and there might be a better fit for your mentality. I know a few clients have tried certain softwares and, it just doesn't fit with who they are and what they like to do. So again, sampling, right?
So beyond the training, though, is sort of these more lifestyle-oriented things. And I think these are where... like what's really important for the kind of people who are listening to this podcast who, are aware they need to train regularly. They kind of know that part. But then we know so many people, and we've been guilty of this at different times in our life, where you're doing all the training, you're doing all that stuff, but you're sleeping like 4 hours a night. You're training 20
See it all the
hours a
time.
week
Yeah.
and barely sleeping.
So this is where that idea of standards and gaps, I think, is interesting. And I think we want to keep coming back to that SMART goals thing, as much as it's sort of weird and maybe overdone, but it makes sense. I think it's common sense. That relevant. So some of these things aren't relevant, right? It's not, so this could be the testing goal you have might not be relevant to the goal you have. But then also with the standards, some stuff is good enough. And that's the idea with standards, is like, this is good enough. And any pursuit further, you could get better. Our standard for squatting is, 1 minute, just in a deep squat. That you're not an Olympian because you did that. Obviously, if your goal is to beat Nino in a cross-country mountain bike race, Nino can probably squat a lot more. There's a weight element there, a speed element, a power element. So you do need to look a little deeper. But if you couldn't get into a deep squat for a minute, or any of these other things, what was the one you just mentioned? Sleep, yeah. If you're not sleeping 8 hours, that's an obvious one, right? If you're not eating vegetables, yes, no. Like, you could almost go to the yes, no, right? Kelly and Juliet's was 800 grams is the one they've popularized there. And I think it's a great one too. And they, it's essentially...
I do think you should get bonus points for leafy greens, though. I do think those should be like triple weight or something.
Right.
Because that one's a little difficult, but...
Sure. And I mean, it doesn't matter. In any case, it's like yes, no, even with the standards, right? And I do see this where it's like, no, I just don't eat vegetables. And you can see why there's problems, right? Like there's, this is the way. So I do think that some of these lifestyle pieces, when we look at the body and the person, this is a complex system. And so any of these little inputs can have downstream effects. So if you're sleeping 5 hours versus say 8 hours or 7 to 9 or whatever you're going to pick as the thing, this could have such a downstream effect on glucose level, motivation, things like this, energy. You just don't know, right? So this is where, when we're trying to set goals, I want to go to Leadville. It's not just I need to train 20 hours or 15 or whatever the number is per week. Or in the peak week or whatever it is, or the CP20 number. There are these other things that we can set goals around in our process goals, is to, look at sleep, get the appointment, get the vegetables, whatever, that bring us up to these standards that I do think for a lot of us are probably the ways to really enhance the 8 hours we have to train in a week.
For sure. Yeah. So definitely check out, if you're looking for a place to start with standards, Kelly and Juliet's Built to Move book, fantastic, really lays out, they call them the vital signs.
Pretty holistic. Yeah, it goes, there's walking and the time sitting and what else is,
they do have
a
sleep.
little bit of nutrition, a little bit of sleep. So it does sort of cover the span of what sort of that, if you sort of thought about it as like the base of wellness, I think about that Steven Seiler endurance pyramid.
Right, the pyramid.
And I don't know that he actually had health on the bottom. I was going to look this up and I forgot to look it up before. Do you recall? I know volume was sort of like the big one at the bottom, and then there's intensity, and then sort of it gets narrower, and then eventually like there's the 1% gains at the top. But I can't recall if there's I think there was like a general health and wellness.
I think so. And even if it wasn't, you could basically picture like Atlas holding the world, like a little guy holding up that entire pyramid, and that little guy is your health and wellness. Like,
well, and it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like sort of like you need to fuel and sleep and stuff before you can, self-actualize.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Okay.
Like, you can't do volume if you're falling apart.
Which is hard. Which is hard, right? Especially if you're someone who doesn't sleep well or something like that. But Kelly and Juliet's standards actually do talk about, well, okay, that's interesting. But then if you're not also walking maybe earlier in the day, seeing the sun, that stuff can all downstream affect sleep at the end of the day as well. Nutrition, obviously, then can also affect, blood sugar. These things can affect sleep. So if the sleep's a touchy one, and that's the one, it might actually be some of these other things that maybe are even more approachable. Because sleep, just try harder to sleep. You're not going to sleep because you're trying so hard.
No, but making more time for sleep is certainly something we know a lot of people can do, especially ones who are training, a ton. There usually is can you nap in the afternoon instead of doing workout number 2 or whatever?
Well, or you would see later in the day, right? If does it have to be a 2-hour workout, or can it be a 1-hour workout with a bedtime and enough time beforehand to sort of settle down and get into bed? Yeah.
And then the last thing actually that Kelly was talking about, and I'm not sure how much he talked about it in Built to Move, but we talked about it when I was interviewing him last week, was like relationships and sort of general happiness. And he had a really interesting thing where he was talking about, you can only, a lot of us admittedly get into endurance sport because we're running from something. We literally are running from something. That's why a lot of people are doing ultra. You can read so many articles, so many books about that. But his point was there comes a point where like that might get you in, but what's going to keep you in the sport and, not injured, not burned out, not overtrained is figuring like kind of solving for that and, coming to more of like an inner peace and, having good relationships, having a good relationship with yourself, having a good relationship with others, having a community built around this sport, that kind of stuff. So I was it was really kind of surprising where I thought I was asking about, running longevity and I thought he was going to be like, well, squats. And he did say deadlifts, but a lot of what he talked about was more of this internal, like finding your peace within the sport versus just using it as Pat Spencer kind of talked about in our last episode with her, getting your mind in gear, that, running is not, riding is not therapy. Therapy is therapy. So I do think that's another one worth bringing up as far as these more lifestyle-based goals.
Yeah. Is there, what do we do with that though?
Therapy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The internal work.
Yeah, which is I think probably important to try too, and that we've talked about. People maybe edge in with sports psych if you're nervous about that, but we often talk about the concepts are similar, right? So probably the things you pull out of actual therapy are going to help as well.
I genuinely think having done both, I've done everything from like regular therapy to like sports hypnosis. And I would say regular therapy was certainly like the most useful for both life and sport.
Well, and that's it, right? Again, complex systems. It's not just someone pedaling a bike on Zwift. It's, if your family is really mad at you, there's no way, even if you're this person, ultra endurance person who can just focus, like that's in the back of your mind, really. It's on your shoulder that's there. So this is where like, if you just spend time on that stuff as well, then it's going to free you up to be, a better athlete, I think.
Yeah. Kelly actually talked about there's a free diver for Red Bull that actually has an interview where he says like if he's in even the slightest argument with his girlfriend or something, his dive is going to suffer so much. Like his breath doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So that's a very like almost life or death situation with that. But yeah, really good illustration. So lots of stuff to think about. So all of that to say, I think we kind of have like these two buckets of goals when it comes to setting goals for the new year. There's the race specific one and like everything you have to do to get to that, your SMART goal for that, but then not neglecting the other bucket of just more of this like holistic view of yourself as a fit human, healthy human, happy human. And the two can coexist. Like they Venn diagram each other really well. Right? Like if you're not sleeping, you're probably not going to be racing that great either. So I do think there's like a lot of overlap there, but really not neglecting either bucket.
Sure. And thinking about it as our, we can call it periodization or planning, but this is really the time of year where, we're in this general preparation where, some of these mental tactics, and some of these great studies that have been done where you actually periodize or plan the mental training, the strength training, what are the other types of training? I'm trying to think of the other Al's, as Dan John would say. Nutritional. Exactly. So this is where you don't do everything, in the race season. You want to practice. So, go into therapy and start crying now. Don't do it the week of the race. You want to work through the stuff in the general preparation, get some tools out of that, how we're going to do relaxation, how we're going to do focus, refocus, how we're going to, whatever the activity is you're getting out of your therapy, your sport psychology, your mental performance consulting. Nutrition, similar. There's a bit of a periodization in there, general principles, but there can also be, as we get closer to the race, there's probably going to be more sugar powder and more, aggressive, to match the intensity. But I think that's the way we think about that is becoming very, very resilient and more like armored during this general preparation period, and then becoming more specific as you get towards that race period. So July, August, you're very much in 100-miler mode, but the rest of the year, this is where you can be building that base, but we're thinking about base as a holistic base, I think as well, especially as regular people, we want to be thinking, how can we shore up some of these other things and just be really healthy? And then also obviously building our capacities in a traditional base sense.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's wrap up there. Hopefully this gave everyone some food for thought heading into the new year. Happy, healthy new year to everyone. Hopefully everyone has a great rest of their week. If you want to do us a New Year's favor, holiday favor, gift to us, head over to wherever you listen to this, rate, review, subscribe. We really appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much, and we will see you next year. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.